So in this segment, we're going to be looking at a deeper dive of the economy from this clip from Ed Conway doing the hard graft and the data stuff. So we don't have to on this channel because I'm crap with numbers. Hudson, Mason, what do the numbers mean? It's literally me. So let's have a listen.
Well, we just got these GDP data through, and actually this is monthly numbers rather than the quarterly ones that we're often familiar with. But yeah, it's not a particularly encouraging picture for the UK economy. Let me just kind of give you the big picture first of all. This red line is showing you GDP growth, so it's monthly, quarterly growth, that red line there. And what we're kind of focusing on mostly is here, these last 2 months, so September and October, we're talking about that line being in negative territory, so down by 0.1% for both of those months. And the interesting thing, and perhaps slightly disturbing thing, is in both cases, economists thought it was going to be above the line. So in both cases, economists thought there would be growth, but in the event there wasn't. And actually, this period that I've marked there, that's the kind of post-election period. And if you just sum up where we are so far, at best, we're talking about basically zero growth since the election, of course.
And, you know, like, they could talk about what they inherited and stuff, and the fact that we were in technical recession, I think it was the end of last year. Based on what some people are saying, you know, Q4 of this year is going to be a bloodbath. Like, it's going to be horrendous. And I think one of the dumb things that Labour did, again, talking about that budget and the pain and all that stuff, I think they've dented consumer confidence, because the thing with capitalism is it requires consumption. It requires people constantly going out and buying things. And we're in a country right now where there are a lot of people who can barely afford necessities, forget luxuries. And that has a massive knock-on effect on the economy. Like, you need disposable income, and we don't have that at the moment, especially with energy prices going up and things like that. Like, the average consumer cannot really afford to do a lot. And so what you're going to see is people cutting back on spending. When the chancellor says, oh, you know, we're going to have to make cutbacks and it's going to be painful, you know, how do you think that impacts consumer confidence? It's massively dented business confidence. And I think consumers are pretty much the same. So it's not a surprise, like, the economy's taken a big hit. Oh, it's not that big. It's minor, but in a period where you would expect growth for the economy to do well, it just hasn't. And I think that goes back to Reeves and Starmer, really.
Of course, that does predate the budget decisions, but nonetheless, and you could, if you've been really pernickety, you could say it's actually down a little bit on what we saw in June. But that is not very encouraging, obviously, for the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. Worth saying, these are quite bumpy, but if we just look into the details, so we kind of zoom out and just look at what comprises that growth. So which different sectors of the economy were going up and down at each of these months. And what's striking about that, and you've got services, that's the main part of the economy, obviously, in the UK, but manufacturing as well, that's the darker blue bits, and then construction too. What's striking about this particular month that we've got the latest data for is, look at this. All of the main sectors are below the line. They all contracted. So you had shrinking across the economy. And actually, that's the first time that's happened. Look at all this light blue there. That's the services sector growing quite strongly earlier on this year. It's the first time that's happened in the last year. And so that is, again, it's not insignificant. As I say, you know, monthly figures, they can be quite volatile, and there doubtless will be some bounces back there.
That's why you look at, like, quarterly figures or year-on-year figures. You know, things can happen month to month. You can obviously get variation and things like that. It makes sense.
In the coming months. But have a look at this, OK? A bigger, longer-term picture is if we look at the whole economy, OK, and see cumulatively how that's grown. And so this is looking at the level of it and cumulative growth that we've seen in the last few years. And then we break that down, OK? So total economy, that's up over the last few years, but it's pretty flat more recently.
And that's why we keep entering things like technical recessions, is because the economy it gets stuck, and then you'll get, like, negative growth or shrinkage, and then it'll grow the next quarter slightly. And you enter this kind of cycle of it's just stagnation.
Look at services. Services has grown kind of faster than the overall economy. That's stuff like retail. It's stuff like legal services and distribution.
Which again still makes sense, because we still have access. The EU still has access to, you know, British services. It's not as much as it was in terms of, like, exhibitions and stuff. But I think for day trading, it's still the same.
But manufacturing has shrunk. Okay, so what you're seeing here, going back to 2021. Is a change in the nature of the economy. And we've got more detail on that from this GDP data. And in fact...
Now, is that because we left the EU single market for goods and the customs union? Is that what? Is that, you know, if 2021, is that when that happened, around then?
You can dig deeper. Look at mining and quarrying. We don't do that much of it, but what we do, that's fallen really sharply. A big sector for the UK, certainly historically, is making chemicals, but that is down really sharply over this period as well. In fact, the chemicals sector is now 37% smaller than it was 3 years ago. That's a...
All right, chat. What could have caused that? The fact that we're out of the REACH program is a disaster for imports and exports as well. I think it's much more difficult to get the certifications and things like that you need for exports, and in terms of imports as well. Like, we don't really have a proper chemicals regulator. We're just piggybacking off the EU's homework, from what I read and what I remember. So it's a really, really poor system. They had some guys on Newsnight talking about how much of a disaster the chemicals kind of agency is in the UK.
Massive change, a massive shift. And what's striking is in this latest data, that's gone down even more. So that's going to be kind of concerning, particularly given that for Rachel Reeves, she's talked about securonomics, she's talked about trying to kind of get industrial growth back. This part of the economy, it really isn't doing all that well at the moment. And there is still that forecast.
It kind of drives me nuts like, when they do analysis like this, they tell you what's going on, but they don't tell you really why it's happening or the potential reasons for it. It's a bit sad, don't you think?
The broad aim, I should say now, it used to be called a target, but now it's more of an aim of getting the UK to be the fastest growing economy in the G7 in the coming years. This is showing you which are the fastest and the slowest growing economies according to IMF forecasts in the coming years. And here is the UK. And these latest pictures, the latest figures today, are not going to change this overall picture, which is that the UK is very unlikely, based on any expectations, to be the fastest growing economy in the G7. We'll have to see what happens.
I mean, I can imagine those numbers. I don't think we'll even do this good. I don't think we'll be what that looks like to be bang on in the middle. I think depending on what the other countries do, obviously Germany's kind of in the mud at the moment. God knows what's going to happen with America, with Trump taking over. France are looking a bit unstable, so maybe we might get lucky and have higher growth figures than certain countries that are looking a little bit shaky. But overall, like, I don't think the UK is going to be in that great a position in a couple of years, because I don't think Labour have got the imagination or the resources to actually grow the economy properly. And when you look at the things they say and the rhetoric they use, as well as their policies, it's not a recipe for success. It's a recipe, I think, for more stagnation. I think that's my opinion, anyways. This is decent analysis. I just wish he would give us the why rather than the what as well. Like, when you look at this, like, it's a complete disaster, and I think that's why they start from 2021. I don't know, but I think that's predominantly down to us being out of the REACH system, or the REACH program. I'm not sure what the EU calls it. That kind of regulatory body for the EU that deals with chemicals. I think that's the key reason why. With the other stuff with quarries, I'm not sure about, but I would put money on REACH being the main problem with chemicals. But anyways, I'm repeating myself. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And let me know what you think. And I'll catch you in the next one.